Can you state your name?
Angel Soler, Soler, not AR.
And how old are you?
I'm 33 years old currently.
Can you tell me a little bit about your childhood?
So my childhood, would you like to know when I was an adolescent? What years of my childhood?
Just from as far back as you can remember.
So my memory is not all that great. I don't remember much about my childhood. The few things that I do remember are times when things were a little rough. I went through some traumatizing things. I've seen a lot of things that most people haven't seen and that have become very traumatizing and have caused me a lot of difficulty in my life dealing with emotions and dealing with life in general. So when I was young, my father died before I was born, and I was basically raised by my grandparents. My mother worked 3 jobs, sometimes 4 jobs, and she was not really around. So my grandparents took the role of being our parent figures for me and my older sibling Miguel. And it was great, but very difficult and traumatizing at times. My grandfather was an alcoholic and very abusive. He would abuse my grandmother as well as my mother and us. We'd get plenty of beatings, some well deserved, but some not. He'd constantly be very angry and once again very abusive. He played a major role in my life though. He was my father figure, and no matter how abusive or how terrible it may sound, I loved him and I viewed him as my father. Growing up, me and my older brother were the only two, and then I had 2 younger brothers who came later on through my stepfather, who I rebelled against a lot when I was young. Got into many physical fights as well as verbal fights with him, but turns out he's a great man and he loves my mother and taking care of her. But during those young ages where I was dumb and I didn't know any better and I was rebellious, we tend to fight a lot, and I felt that he would take my younger brother's side, my younger sibling's side, because those were his kids. And I felt like we were mistreated or didn't get the same type of treatment through that. A lot of the time I felt like we were alone, like there wasn't really anybody there, nobody to communicate with or nobody to connect with. There was nobody really there to listen to what was going on and how I really felt. So it was kind of rough, I guess you can say, growing up. I had only a handful of friends. I got into a lot of fights. I was very angry, and I turned to a lot of violence. Anger was my go-to emotion. Some of the stories that I can recall are being left on a train when I was young, not to anybody's fault. My mother's brother, who's my uncle, had 3 kids as well, and when I was young, me and my older brother were in a stroller, or I was in a stroller, my older brother was walking, and my cousins were in strollers as well, and my mother went to help my aunt, and they took them off the train, but I got left on the train. They ended up calling the cops stopped me at the next stop, and they recovered me, but that all starts to tie into how I felt like nobody was worried about me. They, granted, yes, they went crazy when I was missing, but I shouldn't have been left there to begin with. There were a number of stories where things like that happened. I was sexually abused when I was young, and when I told my grandparents, they kind of brushed it under the rug. Oh, don't talk about your family like that, and kind of made it seem like none of this ever happened. So it was rough. Like I said, I turned to a lot of violence, and violence actually gave me a lot of great feeling. Like it was weird. I didn't want to hurt people, but watching others' misery kind of made me feel like, okay, well, I'm not the only one suffering, and it made me feel better. And it sounds terrible, but that's what comforted me.
You said before that you had a parental more of the closest parental relationship with your grandfather. But however, he was abusive. What about him made him abusive? Was there substance abuse? Was there...
Well, like I said, he was an alcoholic. So he was drunk almost all the time, at least when we were younger, before he got diabetes and started changing his lifestyle. He was an alcoholic, and due to his constant and abuse of alcohol, he would turn very violent, very aggressive. That generation, that era, there was a lot of physical violence going on. It was okay to beat women. It was okay to beat the kids. It was what we viewed as normal. It was a normalcy. And I felt that, okay, every child goes through this. I wasn't aware that it was just me or a handful of people. I thought this is how every family was. And so I never spoke up on it, but it was something that carried on in my life where I felt powerless.
You mentioned that you were sexually abused?
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that? It was a family member?
It was a family member. So we had gatherings when we were young, like most Spanish families. We lived in a building where my grandfather was the superintendent. My uncle had a room on the same floor, and we had a room on the opposite end of the floor. So we kind of had a room on all three sides of the floor. And when we'd have these gatherings, which we had almost every weekend, my family would come in from New York, from the Bronx, which is where I was born and where we spent a lot of time. They would come in, and the elders, the adults would all hang out at my grandfather's house playing poker, smoking, drinking, playing dominoes, bingo, things of that nature, where the women would do their thing, the men would do their thing. And then my uncle's house was more for the older cousins or the older children who would be playing the video games and hanging out with them, hanging out with their people. And then the young kids would be in my family's house, in my parents' house, and we were supervised by a cousin that was just slightly older. Due to that, there was really no parental guidance or parental supervision where we were able to be actually watched and cared for the way we were supposed to be. A cousin of mine, I guess, was sexually active at the time, and they were sexually experimenting, and they kind of used me and several other cousins as a way of testing out their sexuality or their sexual experiences. And I got involved with doing things that I did not want to do, but was told that it's okay. And being young, not understanding, I went along with it, and even when I refrained and didn't want to do things, I kind of was forced into it, and I was overpowered. So it was a very traumatic experience. I tried to tell my grandparents, who, like I said, were my parents at the time. I didn't see much of my mother still. I didn't see much of my stepfather. Me and my stepfather were constantly arguing anyways. And like I said, they kind of just brushed it under the rug. That was not something that happened in our family, and it was not to go out of those walls. And so I just gave up on it. I felt defeated. I didn't have the support, or I didn't have the people that were supposed to protect me were not there protecting me. And slowly but surely I started losing confidence in having anybody to protect me and loving myself. I didn't have much self-worth. I didn't have much self-love. I was lost for a long time and still trying to find myself to this day.
Did you ever try to reach out to your mom? I know you said you didn't see her as often because she was constantly working, but were you able to at least try to talk to your parents and let them know what was going on, or did you look for the support from them?
No, like I said, since they weren't really around, it was difficult to talk to them. The few times we would get together, I tried to make the best out of those moments. I didn't want to bring any negativity or anything depressing into that, involved in that. I wanted it just to be good times because this is the little time that we had to spend together. Also, well, like I said, when my grandparents kind of brushed it off, I felt that, okay, well, this isn't a big deal, and it was kind of seared into my head that I should not be speaking on this, so I just left it alone and left it for what it was. It wasn't until I was able to gain strength and learn how to fight that I finally was able to stand up for myself, and that's how I learned to start fighting back in a way.
What did you do for fun as a child?
I was very into physical activities. I'd run all the time. My biggest thing was football. You can ask anybody. You would not see me out anywhere without a football in my hand. No matter what time of year it was, no matter what was going on, I constantly had a football in my hand and I was running around. I played just about every sport. I tried every sport. I excelled in many of them. Just football was what I was really passionate about. And that was mainly what we did. Just play sports or do physical activities, whether it was playing tag or doing outdoor activities where I could excel with my physical attributes.
Was your family supportive of that?
To an extent, yes. They would come to my games. They would record me of my games. At least for my freshman year in high school. When I was blossoming and I had a lot of scholarships, I had a lot of scouts looking at me to go send me to private schools and everything. And I decided not to go because I wanted to stay near my friends or who I thought were my friends, which could have been a mistake, but I do not regret it. But I was also constantly being told that I would not be good enough to make it to the NFL, or I would not be good enough to make it pro anywhere, that this is just a hobby, something that you can enjoy for now, but to do something else with your life. So there was a little bit of back and forth. Like, they wanted to see me having fun doing it, but at the same time told me I wouldn't be good enough to excel in it the way I wanted to.
When did drugs come a part of your life?
So drugs didn't come until later, though I could already see patterns of addiction. Patterns of addiction when it came to lifestyle, when it came to risk taking, when it came to just everyday aspects. I can see that I had an addictive behavior, and it kind of got to the point where I didn't care about it. If I enjoyed it and it made me happy, then I was going to do it. Eventually, I got turned to drugs. I can't recall the exact age, but I got turned to drugs, and it was one of the greatest feelings I've ever felt. It numbed a lot of pain and made me forget about a lot of the things that had happened, and it gave me a sense of comfort that I didn't have. I thought it was filling voids that I had in my life, but it was only causing more problems.
Do you remember the first time you experimented with drugs?
So I smoked weed. It wasn't my thing. I remember smoking. It kind of made me feel dumb and stuck. It wasn't something that I really enjoyed. I mean, I continued to do it for a little while just to be cool and to be with the in crowd, but it wasn't something I really enjoyed. I got into drinking towards the end of my high school years, and that was fun. It was cool. I liked the way it altered my mind. It made me feel more secure about myself. But that was also something that was more for fun. It wasn't out of control, so to say. And it wasn't really till I tried heroin that I really became addicted to drugs. I remember when I first did it, it was with my uncle, and I took a drug. I took the drug heroin, and like I said, it put me in such a escalated emotional feeling that I felt so great. I felt so euphoric that I just instantly got hooked. I know they say, physically it takes a certain amount of time, and certain things, certain of the chemicals take certain amount of time for you to become addicted. But I knew I was hooked from the very, very start of it.
Was that the first time you did a hardcore drugs?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell me a little bit about the events following, or your experiences following your start of using the drug?
So starting, I guess you can say I started like most people. You do it maybe once in the week, once a month. You're not a full blown addict where you're trying to use every day. It was more of something just to have fun and just to enjoy yourself, try to relieve pain and release stress. And at first, that's how it started. It was great. Anytime I felt certain type of way, I could use and I could just get away for a little while, kind of like a temporary escape. Eventually, it got to the point where the body starts physically demanding it, and it's not as enjoyable, but it's still at that point it was still okay. I still get something out of it. But then eventually, it got to a point where I was doing it just not to be sick. It was more of a way to stay active and to stay functional rather than enjoying a high now. And it was chasing it, committing criminal activities, getting money any way I can, whether it was through work or criminal activity. I would do anything just to get my next fix because my body needed it at that consistent level. And as you build tolerances, it's obviously you need more and more. And it got to a point that I was willing to do anything to get my drug.
So that's how you were funding your habit?
Yes, mainly through criminal activities.
Can you explain how it's affected the people around you?
I think it would be better for them to answer those questions, but from my point of view, it's for nothing but sorrow, pain, a lot of grieving, a lot of hurt. There's nothing good that comes out of it. There's nothing any loving member of the family or friends see out of that. They see you dwindling away, just slowly, just basically, you're dying. You're dying slowly, and they see you, basically almost committing suicide, just in a different way, and it hurts. Like I can only imagine the pain that I've caused to my family members, to my loved ones, them knowing that I have this problem and there's nothing they can do about it. It's not their battle, it's not their fight. And no matter what kind of support they give, there's really nothing they can do. But I know it's caused them an insurmountable amount of pain.
Would you say that your addiction to heroin in the past comes from mostly your upbringing, the lack of compassion, the lack of affection, that void that you mentioned before, from the sexual abuse? Or is there something more?
At first, that's what I thought it was. I thought it all stemmed from all these things. And in a way it does. But I've realized that there are a lot of issues within myself. I tend to retreat whenever I get into situations because that's what I learned to do. It became a learned behavior to retreat. And when I retreat, I turn to the only thing that know that comforts me, which has been the drug. I've become powerless over a lot of things, and not necessarily the drug, but situations. And when I become powerless, and I learned how to fight my way out of things. But when I cannot physically fight my way out of things, I become almost vegetable, like in a vegetable state where I don't know what to do. The only thing I know how to cope with is to use drugs to get me out of that state, to help me move on from it, or temporarily forget about it. And it only causes more problems, but I guess in a way you can say all the traumatic events that happened in my life added on to the way I became, and added to the support of the addiction.
Have you ever been arrested?
Yes, plenty of times. It's not a good thing. At first I thought it was cool. I was young, I got arrested. Oh, I'm a cool guy, I'm a tough kid. And it was like a cool thing, and I bragged about it. But after doing a couple stints in jails and prisons, it's not what I thought it was. And it was honestly depressing, very hurtful. You lose complete freedom. You're told what to do, when to do it, and it's an awful thing that I would never wish on anyone.
What's the longest time you've ever been in jail?
I did 5 years straight for a gun possession charge.
5 years, that's a long time.
Yeah, it's felt like forever, but yes, it's a long time, especially when you finally realize the conception of what time is and the limited amount of time that you have on this earth. It's time that you never get back and time that's just completely wasted almost.
What was the hardest part about being behind bars?
Not being with my loved ones or being able to do the things that I wanted to do with them.
And how long has it been since you've been out?
I got out at the end of 2017, so it's been about 3 years.
And how have things changed since?
You would think that I would have learned my lesson and would have gotten over it. As far as the criminal activity, I try not to involve myself in any criminal activity, but the drugs, not that the drugs have a hold on me, but I have not been able to correct my issues mentally or emotionally, and I still resort to drugs, and it's difficult. I mean, I lose jobs, I lose people that I love and that I care for. It's just a roller coaster.
Even the sexual abuse that you talk about, has it interfered with your sexual identity or relationships, or can you talk about on that? Or
so I guess in a way you can say it has. It's made me not care about myself. And by not caring about myself, meaning I'd experiment and do just about anything just because I want to get out of the way I'm feeling, get out of my own skin because I'm not comfortable in my own skin. And I feel unwelcome by the people around me, by the people that say they love me, but I don't feel that from them. And I do anything just to get that acknowledgement or just to get some type of feeling of love, even if it's temporary or if it's not real, because I yearn for that and I don't feel I get it.
are you straight?
Yes.
What are you doing nowadays to help in maintaining your sobriety, if at all you are?
So I go to a program, I talk to my counselor, and though I have many relapses and I keep falling back, I work on myself by trying to stay as physically fit and mentally fit as possible. There's a lot of mental disorders that I have that I'm still trying to work with and I'm trying to cope with, and it's difficult, and many people don't think that I'm working on myself. They may see it from an outside point of view, like, hey, you're not doing anything, but the struggle is not as easy to overcome as people may think. Addiction is a very powerful and relentless struggle that you have to go through. And it's an everyday thing that you're constantly battling. And no matter how much I've been working on myself, I know I keep falling victim to it, but I see progression even when I do relapse. If I relapse, it's not for months or years at a time. It's slowly decreasing where I go and seek help in a more
Professional, or?
Not as much professional, but I go and I realize that I'm slipping and I'm falling into a hole that I'm not going to be able to get out of, and I try to get myself out of it as soon as possible, rather than staying in that and staying in the streets where I don't care about everything. I try to acknowledge, hey, listen, I have this problem and I need this help.
What's the longest amount of time that you've gone sober, or clean rather?
So not counting jail, I would say about 7 months.
Are you using heroin right now?
No.
And when's the last time you used?
Last time I used heroin was when I overdosed. It was back in April.
Are you using any other drug at this time?
I have a problem where I still have a problem dealing with my crack cocaine addiction. I relapse with that every now and then, and it's difficult. It's been a struggle. It's something that I did not pick up till I was like 30, 31, and it wasn't my drug of choice, but just that chasing that one high, it gets me.
So you do want to get clean.
Yes.
If you had 3 wishes, what would they be?
My 3 wishes would be for my family and my loved ones to be happy and taken care of no matter what happens. My second wish would be to be able to relive my childhood, and not necessarily, I wouldn't mind going through the things that I went through, but have a completely different outlook on what I went through and be my own best friend instead of feeding into the negativity of not being able to do something, be more confident in myself. And the third would be to marry the woman that I love.
When I asked you what your 3 wishes were, you didn't say, I wish that I was never an addict. Why?
I believe that the reason I really didn't say that is because I don't regret being an addict. An addict, you can be an addict of many things. And the reason I don't regret being an addict is because it's taught me so many life experiences and has built me up to be the man that I am today and to be the man that I hope to be in the future. It's showed me so many different things, and that's why, if you remember, I said that I would wish to go back in time and live my childhood with the knowledge that I have now, because I realized that the addiction is not the real problem. The problem is the confidence in myself, my way of thinking, my emotional states, not being able to understand what I'm going through. And those are the real problems. The addiction, if you look at it, there are successful people who are addicted to their work ethic or addicted to certain things. And the addiction, I think, is a great thing as long as it's used in a positive way. And that's why I don't say that I wish that I wasn't an addict, because being an addict can be a good thing as long as you put it towards a positive thing.
Do you think you'll ever be able to kick the habit?
Absolutely. I do feel that I'd be able to kick the habit. It's not as much of a question as if I'll be able to, but more of when I will. Like I said, it is very difficult, but I see improvement every day. I can't say that it'll happen within the next couple of weeks, within the next year. I don't know when it'll happen. But I do know that drugs is not what I want. Drugs is not my solution. I know that it's not my solution. I know that's not what my life is going to end up being. But at the same time, I do understand that I am not fit to deal with certain situations. And rather than opening up and seeking the help that I need in that present moment, I tend to turn to drugs and then seek the help. And that's what I'm working on now, is instead of retreating, living in the moment and understanding this is what's going on, this is a situation, deal with it. Don't sweep it under the rug, don't try to find a way out, deal with it. And that's where I'm at this current stage in my life.
So just trying to avoid running from your issues, from your problems, whether they be emotional or eventful. How would you like your future to look like?
I would love to be married to the woman that I love, to have children, to own a business and have a successful career, to be able to travel and do all the things that I want to do and bring knowledge to other addicts and youth in how to deal with certain situations in their life, dealing with mental disorders, dealing with sexual abuse, or just dealing with criminal activity, dealing with hands that are dealt to you even though they may not be the best hands. Sometimes we're put in situations and you have no choice. There are people out there that are forced into a life that they should not be brought up in, but that's the reality of things. And I would like to bring some type of enlightenment and some type of knowledge to them that can help them carry them out of their situation and build them to be the best person they can possibly be.
I definitely encourage you to do that. I feel that you're more than capable, and I wish you the best of luck.